Came from a different angle this time. I was actually coming back from opening up my window. It's actually really warm in here. So, that was a rather emotional couple of days now, wasn't it? You know, it's funny. Every year I do, the video I always do on December 14th, which is always titled Why I'm Still Here. And go over the story of, the fact of how I contemplated suicide and, how I got out of it. There's always something that I forget whenever I word it. And every year I always forget something. Like, really, what I forget usually doesn't take away from the overall message. It's just I'm the kind of guy that would feel like everything enhances it, like more is better, So, you can call this Why I'm Still Here, Part 2, the Housekeep-en-ing. Yes, I'm going to call that the title. Do something about it. Oh. Yeah, so you're going to be hearing cars go by a lot. Again, I opened up my window. It's really hot in here. And great, now I just lost my train of thought. No. It's really funny because, Monday I finally revealed, the fact that there was a time when I was placed on the autistic spectrum. And that I was put in special education. And how I really was never going to, reveal what that was. But that story was sort of meant to be able to provide context for the video I did yesterday. I say this because a lot of people tend to gravitate more towards the one I did on Monday more than the one on Tuesday, which, there's important messages in both that I highly encourage those to heed and, spread the word about it so, they know to, heed those words too. And the more I think about it, some of the messages in Monday's video were more important than the ones on Tuesday. So I can see why a lot of people tend to gravitate more for the former than the latter. So since I am going to be doing some housekeeping, I have a couple days worth of housekeeping to do, so where do we get started? I guess when it comes to some of the stuff I talked about on Monday, I mentioned how, one girl had chose another guy over me because she found out I was in special education. And it probably came across that this girl was probably really shallow, but I don't want to, because, maybe she was, but I don't want to refer to her as that, because she really was a nice person. Oh, is. She's still alive and she has a family. I'll get into that in a minute. But because this is what wound up happening. So, this was in 8th grade. And this girl, and at this point, I was already in special ed, but as far as I knew, not a lot of people knew about this. Yeah, as far as I knew anyway. And she really did like me. And, she kind of, I won't quite say flirted, but, she showed some signs of, being nice and, some affection. And full disclosure, I really did kind of like this girl too, even though I went 8th grade liking someone else. I probably said this a lot over the years, but I really was a lovesick puppy back then. And I really did want to ask her out too, but at that point, I only really started to like girls, but I was still really shy about asking them out. Plus, again, since I've been seeing a therapist about, my depression and pragmatic communication disorder, one of my problems with depression is I really don't like hearing the word no, especially when it involves something that I really like to do, or in the case of asking out a girl, going out with said girl. So I really didn't want to have to deal with the rejection. But the one time I finally, was going to do it, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to ask her out. I'm going to do it. I'm going to, throw caution to the wind. I'm going to do it, right? Actually involves another kid that was also in special education. Now, it also probably came across that the people that I was with were incredibly horrible, like, screaming all the time, feeling things, stuff like that. And a couple were, but there were a few that were extremely high functioning. So high functioning, in fact, that at first glance, you'd never think otherwise. That, you'd think they were completely normal, And whenever we had lunch, unfortunately, the special education room, group, whatever you want to call it, had their own table, and because I was in it, I had to sit there. So, yeah, I guess it makes sense how people figured out that I was in there, right? Anyway. And at the end of the day, we were all still just, kids being stupid and acting smarmy and stuff like that. In the case of this kid, he was acting as smarmy, and believe me, I know, what I'm about to tell you is horrible. I wound up calling the kid a retard. Again, we're dumb kids, we're not going to know any better, but the joke wound up being on me because the next period was English class, where this girl I was going to ask out was in. And at the beginning of class, I immediately had to leave English class to go back to the special education room, and I had to be there for the entire period. And when I found out why, it turns out that the kid I called the retard ratted on me. So yeah, if anything, I'm more mad at the kid who ratted on me than anything else. But again, the fact that I waited too long to ask her out, that's on me. That is completely on me. And it was really no surprise why she wound up going with the other guy over me. It's also funny because the guy she wound up being with wound up being a really good friend of mine in high school. So that's something. Plus, right now she's married to someone completely different from either one of us. She's married with 2 kids. I can't really be upset by that. Especially when, even if for whatever reason she chose being with me, I don't think it really would have made much of a difference. So, yeah. I want to make sure I didn't make this person come across as seeming, that bad, And, all throughout middle school and high school, I really was relegated to the fact that, I really would never, have a girlfriend or have a date to any important event. Which is why to this very day, I'm still shocked that I even wound up with a date to junior prom. And it's even more shocking when you consider the fact that the person I went to junior prom with was that year's senior prom queen. I probably used up all the luck I will ever have in my entire life. And I'd still say it was worth it, though. Although, that is one thing I want to bring up. I mentioned how, there was nothing good that came out of me being in special ed from that entire time I was in there, from 7th grade to mid to late junior year. This girl went to junior prom with me after I was no longer in special education. In fact, pretty much any good thing that happened throughout high school happened after I was out of there. I mean, my senior year, the unthinkable happened, and I finally got a girlfriend. Yeah, I finally got a girlfriend. 17 years at that point. I got a girlfriend. Hooray. Here's the thing though. This girl actually went to a different school than I did. In fact, the only reason why I even met this girl at all was because she was with a couple of friends. She was with the brother of one of my wrestling teammates, and she came to one of our wrestling matches. It was actually against Maine Enwell, and I met this girl, and she seemed really nice, and we got to know each other a little bit. And here's the thing: we went to different schools, and specifically, she went to Corning East. Oh, right. For those who don't know, Corning High School actually used to be two schools: Corning East and Corning West. And this girl went to Corning East. So we couldn't really see each other that often. In fact, our only ways of communicating was, via text messaging. And immediately we did kind of, within a month, we were a couple. And I admit, we both rushed far too quickly into this. We really did. Really and truly. So it really was no surprise that this relationship only lasted about 3 weeks. And she wound up breaking up with me over a text message the day after my birthday. And with that in mind, no date to senior prom either. Yeah, senior prom was easily one of the worst nights in high school for me. Because honestly, I felt like it was a culmination of literally the time I had at Horseheads. Especially with being in special education all those years. And I pretty much got that at the end. It's as if the universe was saving the best for last. So yeah, you can imagine at this point, committing suicide, not a bad idea. It's never a good idea though, so don't ever do it, please. If you're ever thinking about doing it, please go and seek someone out, please. Although speaking of suicide, I did mention how, I went to Trinity Pauling, as I was looking for a place to, do the deed. But I also always remained optimistic enough to believe that, let's say that for whatever reason, I make it through that whole year alive. Maybe I could come out as a gentleman who would actually be worthy of someone. Specifically, the very girl I went to junior prom with. I mean, again, it's stupid. And of course it's not a very good reason why I went. And I've barely really seen this girl ever since. So, you tell me. It was really never meant to be. I mean, I want to believe I came out a better person. Absolutely. Just, just not good enough for her, Plus, I think and I always felt like this is also a varying factor. I wanted everything I could to never get in trouble with Trinity Pauling, and I did. And it really did involve, again, as I mentioned, the worst person I knew at Trinity Pauling. The very person who I thought was worse than every bad person I knew in Horseheads combined. The one who I mentioned how, he guessed I was on the autistic spectrum and he went with it. He rolled with it. What really wound up happening was, it really wasn't him so much for one of his quote-unquote lackeys. And a bunch of us guys are having a conversation with each other. And he just brings up the conversation, right? He takes one look at me and just immediately calls me out on it. Well, as you can imagine, since he was the big guy's lackey, he went to the big guy himself, and there you go. And when I call him the big guy, I'm not kidding. I mean, this guy was 6'8", somewhere between 280 and 300 pounds, lean, and he took steroids too. I mean, this kid was, for the record, this kid was going to play Division I football. I don't want to say what school because I don't want to give this guy away, but those Trinity Pawling alumni who may be watching this may already know who I'm talking about. And keep in mind, this kid was mean to everyone, including me. It just really hurt when, outside of every bad thing he did to me, he actually guessed at that time that I was on the autistic spectrum. And he just went with it. I actually wound up getting in trouble with his little brother because as his little brother was walking away, I picked up his shoe because his shoe fell off and I threw it at his face. And it escalated some stuff and I got in trouble with Trinity Pawling. Every Sunday for about 6 hours, for about 2 weeks, for 6 hours on every Sunday, I had to be in, Sunday detention is what they call it. Which, as bad as that was, hey, I was able to get some work done. I actually had a couple, which luckily Trinity Pawling was cool like that. Like, if you had work to do, they'd let you do it. Which is really another reason why the special education system was bad, because the way that it worked was in middle school, your lunch period was about 40 minutes, but really you only need about 20 minutes to eat with about another 20-minute study hall. And for the study hall, if you were in the special education room, you had to go to, that room. And there were times where instead of doing work, which is honestly what study hall was supposed to be, we'd have group or whatever that was or whatever. And I hated that. Because honestly, it was all talking about subject matter that I learned when I was 3 years old. And they're talking to us in a way again, some of these students did legitimately need help, so it makes sense that they were being talked down to, but it really didn't sit well with me. And that's another thing I want to bring up about, the faculty at Horseheads as well at the time. How I mentioned that they were horrible people, and especially there were a couple teachers where I looked up their yearbook photos and their smiles looked fake, which they did. But I guess I do sort of, want to believe that there was a point in their lives where they did want to pursue the career that they have. That they actually do want to, teach special education for a living as a means to, pay the bills, put food on the table for their families, stuff like that. And that's another thing I really want to emphasize too. There really are good people out there who actually do want to help others. Honestly, you should help others regardless of whether or not they're mentally incapacitated, or mentally unstable, or what. You get the idea. You should always help others, okay? No matter what, I help others. That's the idea. That's the point I'm trying to get at here. But to me, it just seemed like I didn't belong there at all. In fact, there really was one faculty member who would always try and bring me down every time I felt remotely good about myself. Needless to say, that special education teacher didn't last very long. She was out of there. Which, good riddance. After I was out of special education, I was so incredibly bitter at those faculty that, and believe me, this is going to be horrible. Whenever any of them, if passing by, that is, said hi to me, I did the one thing I felt needed to be done. I completely turned my head and ignored him because I felt I never should have known that these people existed, which is technically true. But that really still is no way to act. And it is horrible. Absolutely. In fact, if you want to say I'm a bad person for it, I'm not going to stop you. You're not going to hear me arguing, at least. But I think over all these years, the worst part about it has to be after I got to college. When, at that point, I had been out of horse heads for roughly a year and a half. And I wasn't getting any sort of flack or being made fun of for being on the autistic spectrum. So I'm thinking, where's the disconnect? Because it didn't really happen at Gettysburg College. For Trinity Pauling, only one guy was, pardon the language, hell-bent on, trying to say that I was. Thankfully, since this guy was bad to a lot of people at Trinity Pauling, no one really believed him. Thank you for that. And so the only place it really happened was at Horseheads. So again, where's the disconnect? Well, it's because the vast majority of the time I was there, it was in special ed. So when I say that being in special education did nothing beneficial for me, that's where I'm coming from. And it probably also came across that every single person at Horseheads was bad when that's not remotely true. There really were a lot of good people. But I was just horrified at who knew I was in there? Who guessed I was in there? Who was gonna be the one to make fun of me for it? Basically, I was being paranoid when I probably had no reason to. Overall, I'd say, if I'm really being nitpicky, of the 2,000 students nearly that I knew during my time at Horseheads, there was maybe about 20 or 30 that were bad, which, again, 1,800 to 2,000 compared to 20 or 30, that's a pretty solid ratio if you're asking me. And at Trinity Pauling, the ratio is slightly even better, Of the 300 plus people at Trinity Pauling, only 2 were really horrible to me. 3 if you include faculty, one of which isn't even there anymore. Which, that's another thing I want to bring up. Back when I did my class and session videos, I mentioned during the Asian trilogy, there was this one teacher who started out really cool, but at one point he got so fed up with the fact that not a lot of us are really getting our reading done and stuff. Whenever I made one comment that was trying to be helpful, and then he's like, "Shut up, Nick. You started out saying pretty decent stuff, but lately all you do is say stupid shit." As bad as that was, I rather would have had that guy for 100 years than even be with the Horsehead special education teachers for 1 second. That's how bad they were. And I guess through it all, there were a few big takeaways from it. And a few sort of, moments that, as bad as they were, really did help sort of give my sense of conviction. In fact, one time I was at Trinity Pauling, a couple of us wrestlers were being stupid, rough housing. One of my teammates put me in a chokehold, and there was this one wrestler who was holding on to a phone, filming it all. And long story short, he marketed it as, me crying. Because after I was released from the headlock, my face is all red, and, I'm teary-eyed. Again, I'm in a headlock. What do you think is going to happen? It's called human anatomy. And I was made fun of for crying. It was at that moment I told myself, I will never make fun of anyone for crying. Ever. I think what really bothers me about that moment too is the person that was filming this. He was a postgraduate just like I was. In a lot of ways. He too was from upstate New York. He was also a wrestler too. We both did cross country together, so we were, acquainted, prior to everything. It bothered me because of everyone I knew at Trinity Poly, of the 300 plus students that were there, you would think that this guy, the one who filmed everything, would have been the guy who got along with me the most. He and I would have been able to better understand each other the most. And he winds up doing this to me. As bad as the worst person I knew at Trinity Poly was, I actually forgave that guy. In terms of the guy who filmed me being put in a headlock and then marketed that video as, me crying, he was the one person I've never forgiven. Until now. I doubt he'd be watching this, but if he is, I hope you know that I don't have any ill will towards it anymore. And speaking of holding ill will, I mentioned how on Monday I wound up getting in trouble because I said, I'm going to kill you to, a couple students who were being mean to me. Full disclosure, I've almost completely forgotten about who these people. I remember who they were, but I don't really care about what happened. I've forgiven them. As far as I know, they're all either married or have girlfriends or have families and stuff like that, and they're very happy. And honestly, even if I did want to exact some kind of revenge, the best kind of revenge is the one where I acknowledge that they're happy and I'm okay with it. Which I am okay with it. They're living happy lives and, that's good. That's great even. Again, the worst person I knew at Trinity Poly, he lives out in the state of Washington right now, and, probably just gave away who he was, sorry. But, he has a wife, and I think he has at least one, I know he has one child, I think he has two. But, he has a family. He's very happy. That's great. I'm really happy for him. I hope he's living a wonderful life. And easily the worst person who's probably had to deal with more than anyone outside of myself or people are my folks. Good Lord, I can't tell you how many arguments I've gotten in with my mother and father over the years because of all of this. I wouldn't even know where to start. Hell, I mentioned how, literally before I began my video on Monday, I mentioned how my mom and I got in an argument. Well, yeah, it was because of stuff like this. And she tried to sort of take it personal by saying, your videos are weird. You talk about making pickles all the time. Well, first of all, me sitting in front of the camera and just talking, if you want to call it weird, you have a very, very crazy perception of what weird is. And second of all, yeah, I've talked about making pickles before, but if I had, it's not like I bragged about or emphasized about it. Plus, if I did talk about it, it was because I probably hadn't done it in a while. Again, my mom loves to use the tactic of trying to do really low blows as a means to, try and get her point across, and because, she loves me and stuff like that. But I'm sorry, when you do that for years and years and years, you really sort of have, you have a very warped perception of what love is. I'm just saying. I mean, if anyone does it, not just her. And, my poor father, too. Holy cow. How much stress has he had to go through? If you can believe it, he's actually like the calmer, a little more accepting one. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's really profound, and he'll chime in about something important when he has to. And I have to be the one who has to be stubborn and not listen. But he's been through a lot of stress over this as well. And it's not like I'm not at fault either, because I am. Again, to this day, I mentioned how, I may never forgive my folks for putting me in special education in the first place. And ultimately, yes, my parents ultimately put me in there. I mean, again, yeah, I got in trouble. And yeah, I would have gotten expelled otherwise, which honestly, in hindsight, being expelled was probably the best thing that could have happened, provided that it did happen, but obviously it didn't. And before I continue, I want to point out, literally the only reason why I went to Horseheads was because back when I went to elementary school at St. Mary Mother, there was one student who was a complete psychopath. Like, I am not even kidding. Like, I went to Horseheads because I did not want to have to go to Holy Family Junior High and then Notre Dame High School and deal with this kid for another 6 years. And I can't be the only one who thought this, because a lot of people from St. Mary Mother went to Horseheads too. Presumably for that very reason. All I can say is if you actually went to Holy Family Junior High at that time, and then Notre Dame, and you had to put up with this kid for 6 years, first of all, how did you do it? And then second of all, you have my undying respect. I can assure you of that. And yeah, I would have been sad if I got expelled from Horseheads for saying I'm going to kill you to those kids. But I still think being expelled in hindsight would have been better than what wound up happening. Especially when, even now, occasionally my mom will have a good idea for me that she thinks is a good idea. And even if it is a good idea, I'm not going to acknowledge that she's right. Because, man, again, she and my dad put me in special education. Why would I acknowledge that? And they thought they were completely right about that. So why would I say that they're right about anything else? I guess you could call that me being stupid and stubborn. But I'm not the only one who would act like this. And it's not like my mom was never right before. In fact, full disclosure, I'm pretty sure as of late, there was one time where something that she suggested not only was right, but it wound up biting me in the behind because I can no longer pursue this endeavor. See, for a long time, there was this one girl that my mom suggested that, I ask out and, have a relationship with. But again, I don't want to acknowledge that she was right. Here's the problem. This girl really is very pretty and very nice and very smart and easily the kind of person who I would like to be in a relationship with because more like me, she's, again, smart, funny, no nonsense. Exactly my type, actually. And I really did like this girl. I did. And in fact, you know what? I still do. You know that girl I mentioned that, on occasion I've been crushing on? This is the very girl I was talking about. The very girl that my mom suggested that I ask out and be with. And I was too stupid to acknowledge that she was right. Funny enough, back in 2019, I actually got to get reacquainted with this girl because she worked at a place I went to every Friday night called Bernie Murray's, which I have mentioned is the best place to get wings in my area. And you know how much I love chicken wings. All that in the Elbow Room. They're both the best. And every Friday I would go, obviously to get dinner too, but really it was just for the possibility of seeing her and getting to know her better and asking her out one day. Then came January of 2020, when my grandfather had died. When I told her about it, she actually consoled me. We talked it out. I'll never forget her for that. I'll never forget that. I told myself that I was gonna, put on my bootstraps and, I am gonna ask her out. But again, this was January 2020. So I think you all know what happens next. Yep, the pandemic happens. And because the world is on edge, my mother, being a nurse practitioner, gives us, the ultimatum, you can go out and be with others, or you can't be near, in my case, my twin nephews at the time. I mean, again, this is before the vaccine existed, and my nephews were at that point pretty much only newborn infants. So if they got sick, there would be a very strong possibility that it would be over. And I couldn't not see my nephews grow up. So I literally haven't seen this girl since the pandemic started. And now I'm worried that she's in a relationship with someone. So even if I wanted to ask her out, I couldn't. I mean, what was I supposed to do? I can only be an uncle to a select few people, I can't not see my nephews grow up and be happy and healthy. But now, the one girl I thought would be perfect for me is in a relationship right now. So I really have nothing to show for what I felt at the time was the right decision, albeit a very hard one to make. And again, this is the girl that my mom suggested I go out with, and I was too stupid to acknowledge that she was right. All because I'm too stubborn to forgive my parents for putting me in special ed. And even now, I still toil with the possibility of maybe even doing so, but again, we've gotten in so many arguments over the years that even when I think I'm about to do so, we get in an argument, and then I remember why I'm never going to forgive you now. And now you know why, when I tell you that my relationship with my parents sucks, I'm being serious. I mean, I really should count my blessings, because by all accounts, yeah, it is better than what most people have. Absolutely. I mean, some people don't even have their parents at all anymore. So, the fact that I even have parents to argue with is, a blessing in of itself. But it doesn't make the fact that we argue any less horrible. And saying that I'm right and she's wrong, or her saying that she's right and I'm wrong, and I really don't talk about my mom, but my dad too sometimes, doesn't make, either one of us more right or wrong. Again, this really is complicated. Absolutely. I'm not even gonna... there's so much to unravel with this, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, in regards to that girl I mentioned, the one that my mom suggested I, ask out, it does bum me out that she probably is in a relationship right now, I think. But I guess I can take some pride in the fact that, maybe she's happy. That's a good thing, right? I'm just sort of tired of, constantly sort of having to rationalize that. Lots of people that I know and I'm friends with, they're in relations and stuff, or married, or have kids. And I don't. I'm just a single guy in a lowly apartment in Elmira, New York. But as bad as all that is, I still get to say that I'm alive to be able to do it. Yes, sir. I had the opportunity back in late December 2008, early January 2009, to commit suicide. But I didn't. No, sir. And I have been able to do things that no one ever thought I'd be able to do. I ran 4 marathons, rode 400-mile bike rides for charity. Both things each took well within 3 months apart from each other, too. I'm probably the only people in my whole area who's able to say that, by the way. You know, I graduated with a college degree. I'm an uncle to 3 beautiful nephews. I got to see my brother get married, start a family. And I've celebrated so many birthdays and weddings over the years. I may have been an outsider looking in, but you know what? I still thought it was all beautiful. And I get to say that I was there for it. I get to say that I was there for all that. And no one can ever take that away from me. No one. You know, not the government, not some person who was mean to me all those years ago. Nothing. I did those things. I was there. I did them. I accomplished the things I wanted to do, and I can say I did them, regardless of what the outcome was. And trust me, there were times I wish the outcomes were better. I still did them. I'm speaking on behalf of the marathons more specifically. I'm trying to qualify for Boston. And throughout it all, in all the arguments that I ever had with my parents, especially my mother. My mother has never wavered on one thing, outside the fact that she's my mom, and she loves me, of course. It's that I have a lot to offer. I have so much to give in life. Well, all I can say is that's all well and good. And I really do want to believe that. But I don't know how to go about doing it. And that's why, you know, I did all the things that I've done. You know, I played sports in high school to try and be accepted among others. I tried to do school plays to be accepted among others. And yeah, even doing these videos, I had something too. And it's not like I was a great person during all that time either. Oh, I want to say I was good doing this. I definitely want to say I was good doing this. But, you know, if I ever acted annoying or rambunctious or loud or anything like that, I want to say I was at least trying to be well-meaning. That's really all I can say. And maybe a little bit of, and yeah, maybe I did want some, maybe I am a little bit selfish, and maybe I did want a little bit of, you know, recognition and praise. And yeah, sometimes I get it when it, and sometimes I would get it if it had, I would get some recognition and praise from others. And yet and still there'd always be one occasion where, you know, some kids' parents would be like, "You let the autistic kid beat you? What's wrong with you?" I mean, really? I mean, it's not like I didn't acknowledge that your kid did a good job either. Whatever. Some people are just cruel like that. I guess there's nothing really you can do about it. But you still wish it doesn't happen. So, sorry, if I've been taking long pauses throughout this, it's because, you know, I kind of want to make sure I go through everything I missed, if I missed anything. You know what? I actually have one final story to give. But before I do, I want to give my low and my high and act of kindness first. I want to, I'll do my low and my act of kindness first. My low is, I kind of haven't been really that great with doing YouTube channel shout-outs lately. Pretty obvious why. So today, I'm going to try and do 3 YouTube shout-outs today to make up for what I missed already. And I'll put their channels in the description down below. You'll know who they are because I'll put them in the description down below. But my high is, I think I can take some comfort knowing I pretty much got through everything I had to. For now, anyway. I'll be touching on a couple more things in a few days. But I think for now, I got through everything. And, I mean, if I really want to be silly, I could just say my act of kindness was forgiving that one kid who filmed me being put in a headlock and marketing as me crying. I don't want to do that, though. I mean, I do forgive him, I just don't want to call that my act of kindness, though. So, I guess my act of kindness will be to remind anyone out there that if there's anyone who needs help, if they're mentally unstable, financially unstable, physically unstable, all that stuff, please try and take the time to help them. It really will mean a lot more than you know. And so, my final story for today, before I sign off, and I have told the story once before, but it really does bear repeating considering what I've been talking about. During my youth, as I was a rather impressionable kid and relatively paranoid, I really would worry about the future. Specifically about forgetting in very important things. I mean, I wouldn't forget stuff like my name or something like that. Or, who my parents are or anything, stuff like that. I mean, like, more important things that sadly we all kind of take for granted. Like, when my birthday is, or, basically, I'd be worried about, I'd forget to do something and I wouldn't know what to do. So, I wound up talking to my mother. In case you're wondering, this was long before the whole special education thing happened, I assure you. I told her that I am kind of worried that, I'd forget, some of the important stuff like my birthday, and at that time, admittedly, I would be worried that I'd forget my name and stuff. And then she calmly, yet confidently, told me, Nick, you're not going to forget that stuff. You're not going to forget any of that at all. Because you're going to call me, you're going to tell me what's wrong, and I'll tell you anything you want to know so that I can help you. Side note, I am definitely going to give my mother a call later. And if you have someone important in your life who you want to give a call to, probably a good idea to do that. So, all I can say right now is, I'm beyond humbled that I was able to share what I shared today. I am very hopeful that these last couple of days have provided some clarification and context and can allow, a better understanding of things Sorry, I don't know how to word that. And always remember, if you ever need help, if you ever want to talk or anything like that, I'm always going to be around. I'll always listen to what you have to say. And much like my brothers before me, on December 14th, 2008, I'll have your back. Thank you very much.